Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. Today's piece of pre-modern power, the Mother of Runes, the salty old tart, sauntering out onto the battlefield in a bathrobe, drinking a cup of tea and babbling about protection. Now, why is this card so powerful? Wizards of the Coast did this thing early on in Magic's life where they experimented a lot with trying to give optional color protection to things. And if you look back through the cards, you can kind of trace this evolution. And so it started with these terrible old ward cards. And so there was one for each color, and it was just, hey, this creature gains protection from just that color. And you can imagine why these were so bad. I mean, you had to pick the correct color when you were constructing your deck. Now, these were printed in Alpha, Beta, Unlimited, Revised, and 4th edition, and then WotC gave up on them and never reprinted them again. And instead, what they replaced them with, the next attempt, was Prismatic Ward. And you'll notice this is not true protection, this is just reducing damage to 0, which is one of the effects of true protection. So protection is a couple of things. A creature with protection from a color can't be targeted by spells or effects of that color. They don't take damage from sources of that color. They can't be blocked by creatures of that color. And so this Prismatic Ward, where you just get damage reduced to 0, is a far cry from true protection, but it's kind of a stepping stone on the way through this evolution. And, WotC would print this first here in Ice Age in 1995, and then they would reprint it in 5th edition in 1997, and then they'd give up on that, and they'd move on. And what was next? Ward of Lights from Mirage. So this is 1996. And, this is okay. It's a creature enchant. You throw it on and you get to choose the color. And, it's got this extra little thing where you can play it as an instant, whatever. But, again, this would only be printed one time in Mirage, given up on forever. And then they would try again in Tempest, Flickering Ward. So, make it a little cheaper, take away that instant play effect. And finally, at this point in Magic's evolution, WotC was starting to understand that people didn't like creature enchants because they represented large potential card disadvantage. When you lost a creature who had an enchant on them, you lost the creature card and the enchant card. And so, people would shy away from creature enchants in competitive decks because of that. And so this is an example, one of the early times when WotC said, maybe we should have a way to, mediate that card disadvantage from enchants. But still, Flickering Ward was not what they were looking for. They would eventually give up on this. This was never reprinted again after Tempest. But something else they would try during Tempest is this guy. Now, the interesting thing here is there had been creatures before in Magic's history. One that comes to mind is Keeper of Kukus, who could give themselves protection. But Keeper of Kukus, he could only give himself protection from red. And so this was the first one I could find that had the ability to give itself protection from any color. And now that's an interesting dynamic to think about here. When you look at Mother of Runes, you can imagine 3 different variables. One is, what is the cost? Well, it's tapping on the Mother of Runes. On the Night of Dawn, it's paying mana. Okay. The second one is, who can I give the effect to? And on Mother of Runes, you can give it to anyone, and on the Night of Dawn, you can only give it to himself. And the third variable is, what colors can I protect from? And the Mother of Runes, it's your choice, and the Night of Dawn, it's your choice. And so you can go through and look at the rest of the kind of cards that fall into this category of creatures or enchantments in the pre-modern era that give you the ability to confer protection from a color. And you can say, based on those 3 variables, what's good and what's bad. Because you had a lot of things like this Night of Dawn where he could grab color protection from any color, but he might only be able to give it to himself. Or maybe he could give it to someone else, but it costs additional mana, which I would say is almost always more expensive than just tapping the creature. And, you have all kinds of flavors of them. Here's one that can give the protection to any creature, but he can only give protection from black. And so when you think about these 3 different variables, Mother of Runes really does rise to the top of all the rest. There are about 20 creatures in the pre-modern era that can confer protection from a color. And she is without a doubt the best based on the fact that she can give any color and she can give it to any creature, and it doesn't require additional mana or some other effects. It only requires tapping. And there are ones out there that require things like discarding a card or sacrificing a land or things like that. But she only requires tapping. Now, the downside, of course, is you only get protection for one half of the time, really, because you will untap every other turn, but every turn the protection runs out. And so it's only half-time protection compared to these other creature enchants like Flickering Ward. But even besides that, it's very powerful in actual play. You can think of it as becoming like a counter spell for any spell or effect that targets a creature. And that's pretty powerful on its own, but also she can just turn into this monstrous blocking creature because she can stand in front of anything, trample or not, any amount of power, and just then tap to give herself protection from that thing's color. And so beyond all of those things, I guess there's one more. She can confer protection from the defender's color to allow one of your creatures to just poke straight through all the defending creatures to your opponent. And so for all those reasons, she really is a wonderful card. And then let's face it, 1 mana to put this out, who cares that she's a 1/1? You're not attacking with this thing. You're not directly damaging your opponent with this creature to win the game. You're taking advantage of this ultra powerful ability to confer protection from a color using her. And really, that's where all the power is. As far as reprint history of this card, it was in a couple of dual decks. There were various versions of it in Secret Lair drops, but it really hasn't seen much reprinting over the years. But still, very, very powerful piece of pre-modern power. And, I've got 2 white decks that each have 4 copies of it. And it's one of those things kind of up there with like Demonic Tutor or Dark Ritual, where you consider it so powerful and such a staple of a color that if you begin building a deck with white in it, it's one of those cards that you kind of consider from the beginning. You might rule it out, but you at least consider it from the beginning because of how powerful it is. Hey, if you like this kind of thing, like, comment, share, and subscribe. Join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.